Britain is older than its maps, and older still are the stories we try to forget. But some stories refuse to disappear. Tonight's tale takes us to the North Yorkshire coast, to a town known for Dracula, salt wind, and things half seen in the fog. David had come to Whitby to scatter his grandmother's ashes, but that was 3 days ago. Now he was just wandering the harbour, unable to leave, telling himself he was processing grief, when really he was avoiding the empty flat back in Leeds, where her knitting still sat, half-finished, on the settee. The fog tasted of salt and something else, something old and briny like the inside of an ancient shell. It swallowed sound so completely that his footsteps on the wet cobbles seemed to come from someone else entirely. Even the lighthouse beam, when it swept past, looked pale and sickly through the white. He could make out the ghostly shapes of masts through the murk, rigging clinking like wind chimes made of bone. The harbour walls disappeared into nothing just 20 feet away, as if the world simply stopped. David pulled out his phone. The screen showed his location as a blue dot floating in the middle of the North Sea. He refreshed the map. Now he was apparently standing in a car park 2 miles inland. Third refresh, the map showed only grey static where Whitby should be. Bloody useless, he muttered, his voice sounding oddly muffled. That's when he saw it. A flicker of orange light, barely visible through the white, warm and steady like a beacon, a pub. No name above the door, no hanging sign creaking in the wind, just that glow spilling from diamond-paned windows. The kind of light that promised a proper fire and hot food. He pushed the door open. Inside, the warmth hit like stepping into an embrace, the kind of enveloping heat that makes you realise how cold you've been. The pub was small, stone-walled, dimly lit by candles and firelight. 5 or 6 patrons sat scattered about rough wooden tables drinking dark ale from pewter tankards. Not a pint glass in sight. Not a mobile phone either, he noticed. The man behind the bar had sideburns like mutton chops and eyes that didn't blink. Not once. His waistcoat looked handmade with mother-of-pearl buttons that gleamed dully in the candlelight. "You'll want a seat," he said. His voice was firm and calm. David nodded, unsure whether it was a question or an order. The chair he chose was carved from what looked like driftwood, worn smooth by countless hands. The patrons spoke, but their voices were strange, not just old-fashioned, but slowed. As if time ran differently in here, like honey poured from a jar. "Weather's thick tonight," said one, a woman in a shawl that might have been woven from seaweed. "Aye," said another, his beard grey as storm clouds, thicker than last tide. Someone laughed. It sounded like waves retreating over pebbles, endless and hollow. The man who hadn't blinked slid David a tankard. The pewter was cold against his palms, and the ale inside was dark as harbour water. "First one's on the house," he said. David didn't drink it, not yet. Something about the way the foam clung to the sides made him hesitate. "Bit hard to find this place," he said, forcing a smile. "Didn't see it on any maps." The man nodded slowly. "We're not on the maps." One of the patrons turned to him, the woman with the seaweed shawl. Her eyes were like wet coal, reflecting nothing. She whispered something, her lips barely moving. "Sorry," David leaned forward. She leaned closer, and he caught the scent of salt and something deeper, something that had been underwater for a very long time. "You shouldn't be here without a marker," she said. David blinked. "A what?" But no one answered. The fire dimmed slightly, and shadows danced across the walls like dark water. He looked again at the man behind the bar. He still hadn't blinked. Not once. And now David noticed his clothes weren't just old-fashioned, they were damp, as if he'd walked through rain that never quite dried. The walls themselves were changing too. What had seemed like ordinary pub paint was peeling away, revealing not brick underneath, but ship timbers. Ancient wood, blackened with salt and time, with iron bolts that wept rust like tears. The patrons were looking at him now, all of them, silent, unblinking, their clothes gradually becoming more distinct in the flickering light. Heavy wool, oilskins, the kind of garments you'd wear for a long voyage. David stood, his chair scraping against floorboards that now looked suspiciously like ship's decking. I think I'll just go." He reached the door and opened it. But the harbour was gone. No fog, no sea, no cobblestones or lampposts or distant abbey ruins, just darkness. Perfect, absolute darkness, like someone had taken a paintbrush dipped in night and scrubbed the world out beyond the threshold. Behind him, the man whose voice now carried the rhythm of waves said, "Drink your ale. It's rude to waste what's given freely." David turned back to the room where the fire now flickered with a greenish tint and salt crystals had begun forming on the window panes, and drank. So, if you ever find a pub in the fog that isn't on your map, be polite, stay seated, but whatever you do, don't even think about drinking that beer or asking for directions.